What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports back again with another one. Got some NFL news involving the Houston Texans. Buffalo defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier is the odds-on favorite to become the next head coach of the Houston Texans. He is represented by agent Tom Telesco, who also represents the newly hired general manager for the Houston Texans, Nick Caserio. Tom Telesco also represents Houston Texans team advisor Jack Easterby. So you can see the connection between those three individuals, and you can see that the direction and the scenario is playing out that Leslie Frazier is the odds-on favorite to become the next head coach of the Houston Texans. Now, Leslie Frazier started his college football career playing at Alcorn State, a historically black college that plays football in the SWAC. Now, he catapulted that into an NFL career, played for the Chicago Bears, and played on one of the most famous and one of the all-time great teams in 1985 that won the Super Bowl. They call those guys the Chicago Bears. The Monsters of the Midway was their name. And those guys did a famous video, the Super Bowl Shuffle. And Leslie Frazier participated in that video too. So he was on one of the all-time great teams. He catapulted that into a coaching career. Served under the tutelage of Tony Dungy in Tampa Bay. He was assistant coach on that coaching staff for Tony Dungy. That team made it all the way to the NFC Championship game and came basically one play away from defeating the greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams, led by Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk. Now, Leslie Alexander catapulted that into a head coaching stint with the Minnesota Vikings. He was there 3 seasons, made the playoffs 1 year. Their record was 21-33-1. So he was there for 3 years. I like to give a coach, in my opinion, 5 years to implement his program fully and see where the team is headed. But after 3 years, I think that's just too short of a sample size to, let me know if he's going to be a good head coach or not. Unless the team goes 0-16 or something like that, whether the team basically tunes out the head coach, I believe that you should give a coach multiple seasons to prove that let him implement his program and his leadership and his expertise in building a winning program. I don't think they did that in Minnesota. Got rid of him after 3 years, made the playoffs one of those 2 years, and then he went on to become the defensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills. He's been there since 2017. They made the playoffs 2 years in a row. And look what he did last night to the MVP of the NFL, Lamar Jackson. Held him to 162 yards passing, and 34 yards rushing. Did a great job. Early on, they had problems slowing down the Ravens' running game, but what Leslie Frazier did was he brought the safeties up, put them in the box, and they was able to negate the Ravens' rushing game from that point on after a shaky first quarter. So he's a guy that's a great defensive mind. He's very underrated as far as when they talk about the top defensive coordinators. They never mention his name. They like to mention a lot of people's names, and they don't mention this guy's name. But this guy's been one of the great defensive coordinators of our generation. They like to mention Wade Phillips. They talk about guys like that, the Buddy Ryans of the world, the Rex Ryans of the world, Marvin Lewis's of the world, the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator for all those years, Todd DeBose. I might be butchering his name, but the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator who came up with that zone blitz defense. He was there for a lot of years, served under Bill Cowher, and he served up under the current Pittsburgh Steelers head coach too. So I think it's DeBose, if I'm not mistaken, but his name is always mentioned as the great defensive coordinators of our time. And Leslie Frazier has been a good defensive coordinator during his tenure in the NFL. I'm not saying he's up there with those guys, but you never hear his name mentioned at all when they talk about top defensive coordinators in the NFL. And he's done a tremendous job. Now, can he become a good head coach on his second stint? I think he can. Now, he's got a lot of different personalities. He's got a lot of different personalities. I'm not saying he got a lot of different personalities. He got split personality. I ain't saying that. I'm saying he's got a different personality compared to other head coaches. Cal McNair at the Nick Caserio press conference said he would like to have a coach that gives those motivational speeches and then after that the team is ready to run through a big raw for the head coach. That's not Leslie Frazier if Cal McNair is looking for that type of head coach. Leslie Alexander is a guy that's, very low key, reserved type of head coach. He expects his players to act professional. He expects those guys to show up to work, do their job, pay attention to details, pay attention to the game plan, implement the game plan, execute the plays that are being called, and be professional at all times. He's not a rah-rah type of head coach. So you kind of wonder, will the fit work when you heard Cal McNair just the other day say he wanted more of a rah-rah type of head coach, and that's not what Leslie Frazier is. But Leslie Frazier has the key to opening that door to being the Houston Texans head coach. Simple fact is his agent, Tom Telesco, is the same agent that represents the general manager of the Houston Texans and the team advisor of the Houston Texans. And then there's also the agent that represents Brian Daboll, or whatever his last name is. I don't want to butcher his name. I think it's Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, who has been linked to becoming the next head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. And guess what? The general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers is represented by Tom Telesco. Brian Daboll, Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, is represented by Tom Telesco. So you kind of see the connection. And the common theme is Tom Telesco is the agent, and he represents all these guys, and all these guys are being linked to the same organizations, whether it be the Houston Texans with Leslie Frazier and Nick Caserio and Jack Easterby, and whether it be the Los Angeles Chargers with the general manager of the Chargers and Brian Daboll, both being represented by Tom Telesco. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. But that's what I've been hearing through the grapevine, that Leslie Frazier is the odds-on favorite. Now, the Texans are going to interview other candidates. Just yesterday, they interviewed the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator, Isabus. I mentioned his name, Isabus. Well, the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator. They talked to him Saturday. They plan on interviewing next week the Los Angeles Rams defensive coordinator Brian Stanley, and they want to interview other guys too. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. Hopefully, if they'll be able to wait, they're gonna have to wait till after Kansas City Chiefs season is over with to interview Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. So they're going to have to wait for him, and it's been rumors circulating around the NFL circles that teams are not going to be willing to wait for the Kansas City Chiefs season to end, because it very well could end on February 7th, the Super Bowl that's played in Tampa Bay, and a lot of teams want to get their head coach in place before that time frame. So that they're saying the time is in the calendar is not going to be in the favor of Eric Bieniemy as far as potentially being a head coach for next season. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. In my opinion, I advise the Texans to wait on Eric Bieniemy, because I think he fits that bill that Cal McNair is looking for, a motivation coach that get his guys to run through a brick wall. I think that's Eric Bieniemy. I think he's got a passion, and he speaks with passion. He's a guy that players will follow. He's a natural born leader, a great speaker, and I think he'll be a great addition to the Houston Texans organization. But we'll see how it plays out in the coming days and coming weeks. Let me know your thoughts about Leslie Frazier being the odds-on favorite to be the next head coach of the Houston Texans. And I'm going to give you another little bit of news, because it's two openings besides the Houston Texans openings that are looking for a head coach, as the other head coaching vacancies have been fulfilled. The Detroit Lions, I'm hearing that they're looking at Dan Campbell, offensive coach, who's coached with the Miami Dolphins, coached with the New Orleans Saints and played for the New Orleans Saints. They're looking at Dan Campbell as their next head coach. He's the odds-on favorite for that position. And as far as the Los Angeles Chargers go, I just told you about a minute ago that Brian Daboll is the odds-on favorite to become the next head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, as he shares the same agent as the general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. Subscribe if you like. This video is JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. Hit the like button if you like the content of this video. And once again, subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. I'll holla.